had had the P and O removed. He stared at it, wondering whether this was just a happy coincidence or if the youth of Bexford had a sense of humour. A small reception area was visible through the plate-glass automatic doors. A desk at the back wall and a few plastic seats on the right. More functionality over design. The station at Oxford hadn't been much to write home about either, but it had at least been slightly grander and more impressive than this. He took a deep breath and tried to shake off the nerves he was feeling. He had nothing to feel nervous about, he knew that. Yes, this was a new station in a new town, in a new county, but this was still police work. This was what he had trained for, what he wanted. Bexford Addervale would be no different to Oxford, Oxfordshire, other than the fact that his past wouldn't be quite so present here. This was his chance for a real fresh start, and he had worked hard for it, foregoing the usual activities of people in their early 20s in order to study, to learn, to push himself. It had worked, and now here he was, a newly qualified detective sergeant at the age of just 25. Although it felt like he had been waiting all his life for this moment, in reality it had been just 10 years, from the moment his life had been changed forever, from one of innocence of the world around him to one of hard reality. This wasn't the time to relive old wounds, but it was becoming hard when in a few days there was a chance it would begin to catch up with him again. Would all of that follow him here? He shook his head to clear the thoughts from his mind, turned back out towards the car park and looked at his watch again. 9:50. He felt uncomfortable about starting late, but that's what his instructions had been. Inspector Brock, his new superior, had wanted him to pick up the car he had been assigned first. For someone who had walked from his new rented flat to the station for the last 2 mornings just to look at the place, the extra weight was frustrating. This morning he had picked up the car, a blue Ford Mondeo that seemed to enjoy leaping between gears without warning, at 9, as he had been instructed. He had then driven straight to the station and spent the last half-hour milling around the surrounding streets, waiting for his allotted time. He took another deep breath, turned back towards the steps, and clattered into a blur of blue. "Oh, I'm sorry," Poole said before he had even finished staggering backwards. His natural instinct to apologize was so strong that he occasionally even apologized to himself under his breath. "No problem, I was miles away," said a light voice in a thick Yorkshire accent. Poole looked up into an angular but beautiful face with golden-coloured skin, smiling back at him with straight white teeth. With a sudden panic, he realized that she was dressed in a police officer's uniform, her hat tucked under her arm. "Yes, well, what's your name, Constable?" he asked, trying to sound as authoritative as possible. "Sanders, sir," she answered, standing up a little straighter and the smile fading from her lips. "Sanita Sanders." "I don't need to know your first name, Constable, and you should consider looking where you're going in future." "Yes, sir," she answered, her jaw tensing. "OK, well, carry on," Poole said, putting his hands behind his back and lifting his chin slightly. The young woman gave a curt nod and set off up the steps towards the station. Poole exhaled and closed his eyes. His guts squirmed with guilt at his treatment of the constable, but he clenched his fists and pushed it down inside. This is how it was going to have to be. He had never had the respect of his colleagues in Oxford, for reasons relating to his past. Here, though, things were going to be different. Here he had a chance to make a new name for himself. Great, he thought. His new name was going to be Pompous Twit if he carried this on. He finally climbed the steps to the station itself, pausing for a moment to check his reflection in the window to the side of the doorway. He adjusted his tie for what must have been the 100th time that morning, and stepped through the automatic doors and into a small waiting area. He walked across the cheap blue carpet and up to the front desk that curved into one corner. There was no one behind it, but a door in the back wall led to an office from which voices drifted through. He rang the small brass bell that sat on top of the counter and waited. After a few moments, a large, pasty-looking man squeezed through the doorway and came to the counter. "What can I do for you?" the man said, leaning on the counter heavily. Poole took a small step backwards in case it gave way. "I've been transferred here from Oxford,"